I am a huge fan of Seiko diver designs. As a matter of fact, their designs happen to be really my favorite of any dive watch. Something about them just really strikes a chord with me and just resonates with me. I love the aesthetics. And that brings me to this watch, the Seiko SLA057. 8 months ago, I sold my Tudor BB58 specifically so that I could buy and own the SLA057. And since that time, 8 months ago, I have worn this watch almost every single day. As a matter of fact, the power reserve on this watch has never died in the time that I've owned it. I was lucky enough to come across someone selling this secondhand at a really good price. I actually bought it for exactly what I sold my Tudor BB58 for. And wow, could I not be more happy with that decision. I have worn this watch more than any other watch I've owned. I've already made some great memories with it. I've taken it on many hikes. I've even done some light snorkeling in the ocean with it. And I've even swam in some creeks with it. So first I want to talk about the finishing of this watch. The case is made from Seiko's proprietary Ever Brilliant steel. The whole watch is assembled and finished by Grand Seiko, and it features the 8L35 movement. The finishing on this thing is absolutely phenomenal. The case design and finishing blows me away, even after having it on the wrist for 8 months. I never get tired of how dynamic this case is. Quite honestly, as much as I loved my Tudor BB58, the finishing on this SLA057 is just on a whole nother level. The size is just at the limit for what my 6.5-inch wrist can handle as far as just the appearance. You've got a 42mm case, and the lug to lug is right at 49mm, which is the limit for me. But the thickness is just over 12mm, which is much more thin than an MM300. It wears great on my wrist, and the weight is just perfect. I can feel the watch on my wrist, but it's not too heavy or top heavy like a MM300 would be. One thing I love about this is the crystal. It has a slight dome to it that is much different than the SPB models I've had. When you look at it at the right angle, it looks so cool. And it even looks like it's oil filled. I think Escapement and Watch mentioned that. But the dome to it is so subtle, and it gives the dial such a really cool look at different angles. I've actually been really impressed with the movement in the 8 months that I've owned this. Once again, it's been on my wrist almost every single day, probably 95% of the time. And I wear my watches about 23 hours a day. The only time I take it off is to take a shower. I sleep in it, I do everything in my watches. And that being said, the 8L35 has given me a very consistent plus 5 seconds a day throughout my entire ownership, which to me, I actually really enjoy that consistency. And I'm happy with that accuracy. The lume is fantastic, it's Seiko, you would expect nothing less. Like I said, I sleep in my watches and I wake up 1 to 2 times a night. And you know, once your eyes are adjusted throughout the night, looking at the watch to be able to tell time, you can easily do so no matter what time it is. I can read the time at 1 a.m. just as well as I can at 4 or 5 a.m. So I am a big NATO strap wearer. That's pretty much all I wear, save for maybe the occasional leather strap. And this thing looks so good on a variety of NATO straps. My favorites happen to be a really dark OD green, and I really like a tan or a khaki. But this thing looks amazing on NATOs, so it fits me. It's a match made in heaven. Now, I've owned a few Seiko divers. I've owned a couple of Grand Seiko watches. I've owned the Tudor BB58. I've had the pleasure of, handling and wearing my friend's Omega Seamaster Professional 300. So I've seen a good variety of lower end watches to even higher end watches. And I have to say, this SLA057 really punches at its weight class. I think compared to things like the Tudor BB58, the Omega Seamaster Professional, in my opinion, having owned the BB58, I think this is, a step above in terms of fit and finish. And when compared to something like a Seamaster Professional, I think it's right there. I think it depends on your preferences, what case design you like more. But in terms of craftsmanship and finishing and all that, it competes with a Seamaster Professional, if not exceeds, depending on your, what you value, all day long. And as much as I do love a Seamaster Professional, I think it looks great on my wrist. I actually love the design more in person. You know, as demonstrated by the last 8 months, I would rather have this Seiko SLA. I love Seiko's designs. I don't think this is a watch for everybody necessarily. I think you really have to be a fan of Seiko and their, dive designs and their history and heritage there. But this watch just happens to be very perfect for me specifically. There are a lot of, personal, subjective reasons why I would choose this over, an Omega Seamaster or a Tudor Black Bay or kind of anything in that same price range category. So while I acknowledge it's probably not a watch for everyone, this specific watch happens to strike a chord with me. And just looking down at it on my wrist day to day, it never fails to blow me away. So anyway, there is my semi-long-term review of the Seiko SLA057. It is my favorite watch that I've ever owned, and it has become the most worn watch I've ever owned. And quite frankly, I kind of have a very minimalist collection right now. I have this and really one other watch that I've spent my own money on, which is the Seiko SRP E67. And then I have a couple of other gifted watches. But this is it. I pretty much cashed in all my chips and have gone all in on this. And for the last 8 months, I have not regretted it one single bit. So anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. This is not a very technical review. It was just kind of my thoughts as an owner for the last 8 months, and just wanted to share a lot of photos that I've taken of it and some wrist rolls. So anyway, thank you for watching.